Hello, welcome to Civilization Jihad Awareness, the show where truth wins every time. Today, we have a great guest, and we're going to be getting into that. But let me first talk about the truth of what civilization jihad is and where it comes from. The terminology is a term that comes from the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. They created this term in a document called the Explanatory Memorandum, which we have to thank one police officer, a Maryland transit officer, for simply doing his job. Thank God there are policemen out there simply doing their job, because we owe a debt of gratitude to them for doing this, for just being there for us. And we have this one document thanks to them. So let me just read one paragraph from that document. It says, understanding the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. Again, this is their goal for North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all the religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen equal? So today, a lot of this discussion that we're going to have about what civilization jihad is and the real discussion comes back to a lot of what's in our textbooks today for kids. And I'm upset with what I find in my textbook, because for the school that I work in, I've notified them of errors, 25 errors on a few pages. I'm also upset that I look at almost every single social studies textbook I have does not tell the truth about what Palestine is or where the term comes from. So today I have with me, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. He's the managing director and managing director of the Coalition for Jewish Values. He's also the founding director of Project Genesis, the architect of Torah.org, TorahMedia.com, and other leading internet resources for Jewish outreach and education. Rabbi Menken earned a BSc in computer science from Princeton University before pursuing rabbinic studies at yeshivas or Somach of Monsey, New York, BMG Israel, Lakewood East, and the Mirah Yeshiva in Jerusalem. He is a co-founder and editor of Cross Currents, an online journal of Orthodox Jewish thought and opinion. His works have appeared in outlets from the New York Observer, an American Thinker, to the Algemeiner, Ami Magazine, Hamodia, Jewish Jerusalem Post, and the Jewish World Review, and Times of Israel. Rabbi Yaakov Menken and I recently met in Washington, D.C., and we hit up quite a discussion. And I don't think he knew where I was going to go when we started, but we ended up being very, very happy to have met, and I had to have him on my show. With that said, welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited to get into this question, the question that every educator should hear. So Rabbi Menken, what is Palestine?
So first of all, that was quite an introduction. You remind me of the rabbi who commented, after an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say.
That's the big question. What with this is what we had a brief discussion in D.C. on this, and we had said, I was saying to him, this is the problem. We're miseducating our children in the United States by not telling them what Palestine really is. You go back 10 years, it was in the textbooks, and now it's gone.
It really is kind of a scary thing that it's kind of been. We're engaging in historical revisionism. We're rewriting history. It's happening all over again. And the first thing to recognize about the name Palestine is that it is a colonialist, supremacist name that was specifically used by people who were demonstrating bigotry and hostility towards Jews. So the whole name is one of disenfranchisement, and people don't realize that. The first people to call the region Palestine were the Greeks, and those were the same Greeks who insisted on setting up idols in the temple, the Jewish temple, and getting people to do, to behave like the ancient Greeks. And do you know that the original Olympics were held in the nude?
Yes.
It was all about worship of the body, and how the glorification of the body, et cetera, and it was supposed to be for the idols, and so that's what they were trying to get the Jews into, and that was the Greeks. And then the Romans actually named that specific section Palestine as they engaged in ethnic cleansing, as they expelled the Jews from their homeland. Of course, the name Judea or Yehuda in Hebrew is way too close to Yehudim, Jews. So it was obvious that to the Romans that name had to go. So that means that the name itself is a name associated with bigotry and ethnic cleansing. And here's a wonderful thing about that name. It cannot be pronounced in Arabic. Arabic has no phoneme for a P sound. Hebrew has no W. English has no hard ch sound, which does exist in Hebrew and German. Think about the name Bach. We spell it B-A-C-H, so you would think it's
no
Bach.
gutturals in English. There are no gutturals in English.
So that sound right there. So the phoneme P, does not exist, and that is why in Arabic you hear it referred to as Palestine, because they have no ability to pronounce the original Roman name.
That is funny. And that they want to. This is where I get into laughing a little bit, because this is a group of people who call themselves something they can't even pronounce. But by calling themselves Palestinians, are they really saying they want to be Jews?
They're not saying they want to be Jews. In fact, it's a matter of hostility towards the Jews, because, of course, if you look far enough back in history, it's the Jewish homeland. If you look at where it is today, it's the Jewish homeland. And they're trying to say, no, don't look at this and don't look at that. Those aren't the real Jews. They're all converts from Europe or this, that, or the other. Sure, you hate us because we're converts. But the idea that the Arab in the middle is called the indigenous Palestinian is completely foolish. Arabs come from a place called Arabia. And how did places from Syria to Iraq, the Arabs did not build the pyramids in Egypt. They did not build the ziggurat in ancient Iraq, Persia, and they certainly, Iran is Persia. Ancient Iraq was Babylonia. The ziggurat. How did all these places become Arab countries? How did Morocco, northern Africa, become an Arab country? And the answer is invasion and ethnic cleansing.
And you can find all this stuff, interestingly enough, in Muslim histories called the History of Al-Tabari. And you'll find this particular story in Volume 12, The Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, and the Conquest of Syria and Palestine. I recommend reading this. It's their history, and they're talking about ethnic cleansing, as Rabbi just put it. And it is exactly, they're admitting in their own histories that that's what they did.
It's
they're
jihad.
proud of it.
It's jihad, and the interesting thing is that the Arab flag, the flag of the Arab revolt, which, by the way, the Palestinian quote-unquote flag is just a variant thereof. There's about 10, 12 other countries. There are dozens of countries, past and present, that have used this flag of the Arab revolt. It's about the 3 Arab tribes and the caliphate. And that's that red triangle is about establishing a caliphate, establishing a new jihad army. And that's how these countries became Arab states in the first place, through jihad, through the violent Muslim expansion. And then today, they're just, they have this flag of the Arab revolt, which they keep using. Funny thing is, again, the Palestinians are using a recycled flag. In 1958, think about the math here. 1958, that flag was in use. There was a very short-lived alliance between Iraq and Jordan when both countries were run by cousins. Then I believe it was the Iraqi government that was overthrown. But during that time, they made a federation, the Arab Federation of Iraq and Jordan. And during that period, the flag of that United Federation is precisely the flag being used as the Palestinian flag today. So in 1958, they didn't have a flag. They have never had a national identity there. They specifically, it was the Arab Mufti of Jerusalem who insisted, oh, no, there's such a thing as a Palestinian Arab. The other Arab states said, no way. And even in their early days, the PLO proudly admitted that if they would manage to get rid of the Jews, and they were only using Palestine as a way to confront the Zionist claim to Israel, but once they managed to accomplish their goal, they would merge with Jordan.
And that was a promise. I remember that. That was what they were planning on doing.
Back in the 1970s, they admitted that they were after doing that. And of course, there's no difference between, even the Palestinian Authority said on their own website that today's Palestinians are descendants of the Arab people and share their culture, language, and history. Well, culture, language, and history are how anthropologists distinguish distinct peoples. In other words, the Palestinian Authority declares themselves that they are not a distinct people from the Arab nation. The idea that this is a distinct people who need a homeland is an anti-Semitic fantasy.
That's exactly right. I mean, to come out, this is the stuff we need in the textbooks today, because I'm encountering educators and people saying things like Israel's an apartheid state, or they say things like Israel, is cruel to those people, to other people who belong there, and they're ignoring the fact that these people originally all left too. When Israel became a nation, they left.
They left because the Arab armies told them, get out of the way so we can kill the Jews and invite you back. I mean, they were planning for a massacre. They said so openly in 1948. Yes. Their goal was to massacre the Jews. Their Nakba, their disaster, is that they fell 99% short of their goal. They only managed to murder 1% of Israel's population at the time. This nonsense that the Jews were not there, the Jews have been expelled. One thing that you see throughout Jewish history and throughout world history is that there is, in fact, no religion, no people with a greater attachment to their homeland than the Jews. Nobody else says, no, this is where you do Judaism. And even to this day, we say there are certain things that you can do in Israel that you can do nowhere else. In the land of...
Can you give us an example?
The tithes of fruits and vegetables, those are only done in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is, in Israel. And Israel is considered holy ground. It's the Torah of Israel. It makes one wise, so it's the best place to live and study. It still says that you have to have a valid reason not to live in Israel. It's more like the default should be that you should live in that land. And this has nothing to do with Zionism, nothing to do with the modern state. It has to do with the basics of Judaism. And there's no other religion that's like that.
And that's true. I mean, if you look at Islam, the reason they leave and go on migrations, as you see now going into Europe, which went into the area now called Palestine and Israel, which went into Egypt, which went through North Africa, those were called hijras, people. Those were called hijras for the purpose of jihad. And it's referred to in Islamic histories as hijras and jihad. And this is the truth. And we're getting it from their stuff.
Look at the situation today. Why is it that a Syrian refugee is treated worlds differently than a Palestinian refugee? A Syrian refugee, we try to get them out of Syria and, in fact, out of the entire Arab world. None of the Arab states will take them in. The Arab states are not interested in holding them. The Arabs say go elsewhere, so they go to Europe, and they stay in Europe. They're not waiting to go back home. What happened to that tie to the homeland and all of that stuff? When it comes to Palestinians, on the other hand, Palestinians of the third or fourth generation are being called Palestinian refugees. That's not how being a refugee works. You do not pass refugee status to your children. And there have been refugees from all sorts of conflicts all over the world. I mean, Kosovo and Bosnia and in Africa and Sudan. And in none of these cases, including Syria, right next door, do we say that a second, third, fourth generation descendant of refugees is also called a refugee. And yet the Arab world is still keeping Palestinian refugees in camps.
And this is part of the insanity. And Trump has actually gone against the UN on this and has been fighting against it quite well. My concern is that we start following United States law regarding this. We need to talk about what a refugee is according to United States law. And if we do that and we just enforce that, we'll stop giving a ton of cash to the UN. And that's one of the things I believe Trump is fighting for.
The UN Relief Works Agency cares only about the plight of Palestinians. For example, they don't talk about Syrian refugees except the Palestinian ones. They do not deal with any of the other refugee crises anywhere else in the world. And these are the same guys who have schools where they keep finding out that the teachers are teaching the kids how important it is to hate Israel and kill Jews.
Let's look at the let's look at the Refugee Resettlement Program Act, signed under Jimmy Carter, the Refugee Act of 1980. In it, it says a refugee is any person who is outside any country of such person's nationality, or in the case of a person having no nationality, is outside any country in which such person is habitually resided, who is unable or unwilling to return because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group. So there's nothing here that would classify the people who are Palestinian, calling themselves Palestinians, as a refugee. There's nothing there. And even in the UN's definition, it doesn't fit.
Well, that's why UNRWA is different than any other effort to help refugees from anywhere else in the world.
It looks more like a scam to give finances to a nation that pays killers for killing people. I don't know what. I mean, is there another reason to give them money besides the fact they're using their finances to pay people who kill others? I can't figure another reason that they're doing this, but it makes no sense to me. It's very,
it's alarming. And of course, Israel is the one country in the Middle East where Arabs do have rights. Arab citizens of Israel have the ability to be Supreme Court justices, members of the Knesset, TV hosts, reality TV stars. And, of course, you only win a reality TV contest by majority vote. You got to assume that the majority, given that the majority population is Jewish, the majority of voters in these shows are Jewish, and yet Arab contestants win. So where's the racism? Where is the discrimination? You have the Arabs out on the West Bank, on the other hand. Well, it's not Israel's fault. Israel said in the 1990s that they were going to give the Palestinian Authority the ability to have a government and a vote and everything so that there should be democracy. Well, Mahmoud Abbas is now in the 13th year of his 4-year term.
I'm just amazed. I mean, I've met the brother we've had some people come locally to talk about Israel, and I wish I could send some teachers over to Israel just to see the truth of what's actually the equality that's Muslim and Jew over there, about the rights that they have. I'm always amazed when I listen to people come and use that term apartheid regarding Israel, and they don't get it.
See, that's outstandingly racist and bigoted.
Yes.
When you call Israel an apartheid state, I mean, and here's how to look at it. The entire Arab world between the early 1940s and today expelled the vast majority of their Jews. Today, you cannot find anywhere in the Arab world a country with even 10% of the Jews that it had 100 years ago. That's partly because of how the Arabs were treated, and it's partly because, how the Arabs treated the Jews there, and then the riots that followed when Israel won the war and they couldn't manage to defeat the Jews in their home country, they took it out on their local Jewish populace. People don't move, by coincidence. They have to have a reason to move. Well, the Jews all had to flee. In fact, in certain countries, Iraq in particular, 1941, it's called the Farhud. They had a anti-Semitic pogrom explicitly inspired by the Nazis. This is not a disconnected thing, or anti-Semitism was really a European thing. Oh no, you have the entire Arab world driving out. So you don't have a single country with even 10% of its Jews. Meanwhile, Israel has 5 times as many Arabs as it did 100 years ago, and they're not leaving. Unlike the Jews who fled all of these Arab countries, and the majority of them moved to Israel, the Arabs have no interest in living under Palestinian Authority territory, much less going off to other Arab countries in general.
We haven't even talked about what Israel gives to the people who, again, are claiming to live in these Arab regions. Let's talk about health care and the amount of hospital. I mean, they're offering pretty much free hospital care to many of these people.
There was a fellow who wrote in an account, his daughter was in the ICU, and as they're in the ICU, they rush in with an Arab baby who they had just brought from Gaza. And the ambulance corps had done a transfer while the Hamas fighters were actually shooting at the ambulance. They managed to transfer this girl and rush her to an Israeli hospital for treatment. I mean, that is how Israel tries to deal with the Arab population. In fact, all of your leading haters, Abbas sent his own sister to Israeli hospitals. One of the Hamas leaders, and I forget who it was, again, a very close relative, immediate family, off to an Israeli hospital. So they're busy talking about how Israel's an apartheid state that doesn't care about them and wants to kill them. But in the meantime, when one of their own family members gets sick, they send them over to Israel because it offers the best medical care in the region to anybody.
And that's one of those things that says, we gotcha.
Well,
it's so
that's
truthful and in your face. They write about it in the newspapers. They talk about it.
The accusation of apartheid is basically saying we're going to point our fingers at the victims of racism who were expelled by the Arab countries. Because, again, the majority of Israel's Jews are comprised of the descendants of refugees from the Arab countries. We don't call them refugees anymore. We call them Israelis because Israel did not keep them in camps. Israel did not call them refugees. Israel integrated them out of the camps and into Israeli society as quickly as possible.
And even today, this is continuing to happen. When I was in Paris, we talked with, I believe, one of the head rabbis for, I think it was District 19 or 18. And this area is almost entirely Muslim now. And the rabbi we talked to him and says, is it safe here? And he's like, well, he says, well, my children are in Israel now. I feel safer.
Yeah.
Well,
Bethlehem used to be I believe, 20% Christian when it was under Israeli rule. And today, under the Palestinian Authority, it's down to 5% Christian. Think
and
about Bethlehem.
Why would that be?
That's awfully important. It has something to do with the same reason why Christians are no longer the majority in Lebanon.
Exactly.
Lebanon was a Christian country 50, 60 years ago. Today, it is majority Muslim. And it's about that same hostility towards any other religion.
And they want dhimmis. They want people to pay them for basically existing. This is the insanity. When I look at how Israel is treated today, I get disgusted. I try to have good academic conversations, and I want to transfer this conversation. Like we talked a little bit offline about how I wanted to go into the anti-Semitism felt here in America. I shared a couple articles that came out this week. One of them, well, it's somewhat been a couple weeks, how the SJP is at Florida State University and how they're treating Jews on the campus. I read some of these things and they're hard for me to even read just because they're so disgusting. SJP, for those of you who don't know, that's Students for Justice in Palestine. Basically, this is a Hamas-run group that is on campuses across the United States and, in my mind, has no legal basis for existing as much as CARE has no legal basis for existing, since they're both entities run by terrorist groups that are recognized as terrorists.
The national boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel, it was recently revealed that part of their funding goes overseas and ends up in the hands of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. These are people funding terrorist organizations. Just the name, Students for Justice in Palestine, implying that Palestine has a justice problem, which, again, it's the only country in the world, as far as I know, where you have Jewish and Arab Supreme Court justices working together, and Arab and Jewish political parties in the same Knesset. So the idea that Palestine is the one place in that region that has a justice problem. By the way, another detail about Palestine. You ever know? There's a lot of indigenous peoples and a lot of ancient peoples around the world, including the Native Americans, and they all had their territories, right? I mean, the Navajo Indians run from the southwest of the United States down into Mexico, right? You with me?
Yes.
Is there can you name anywhere in the world where the modern borders happen to coincide with where they were in ancient times? Are the borders of France what they were in the 1500s? Are the borders of England and Scotland? They only have one border. It's an island. The English and the Scots are next door neighbors to each other. Are there borders today, England versus Scotland? If Scotland were to, there's all this talk about now after Brexit, after Britain exits the European Union, Scotland might vote to stay in and separate. When they separate, will they be going back to their ancient borders of the year 1000? Not at all. Well, the Palestinian Authority has a map of Palestine. Guess what that map is? From the river to the sea. It's Israel. It's Israel. Yeah. It's British mandatory Israel, meaning to say the Golan Heights, which were under the French mandate of Palestine, like Syria. Well, the same advocates insist that the Golan Heights should be given to the Syrians. Wow, won't that work out well? That's a brilliant idea right there. But everything else, their map of Palestine is the map of Israel, meaning not an inch of Egyptian territory, not an inch of Jordanian territory, which, by the way, the British mandatory Palestine, the overwhelming majority of it is today called Jordan. The Israelis actually got the much lesser half. It's either 70, I think it's like even 78% of the land went to Jordan. The Palestinians do not claim any of that land, even though the same ethnicities and the same families are, in fact, a big portion of Jordan's population. It does not claim an inch of Lebanese territory. It does not leave behind an inch of Israel, which it does not claim. All of this in order to claim that every inch of Israel is somehow stolen land. That was taken away from the indigenous Arab population, who all knew where they were moving. Here's something interesting to look at. The Arabs kept the names of most towns, not just in Israel, but all over the Middle East. When they took over Egypt, they kept the name Egypt. When they took over, all northern Africa, whatever, the city's name, it was the city's name. In Israel, that's true. That's how we know where Akko is and Haifa is and Beersheba, etc., etc. But there are three exceptions. Jerusalem they call Al-Quds. Hebron they call Nablus, Shechem is Nablus, and the other one is Al-Khalil. I forget which one is which, to be honest with you. Why did the Arabs rename only those three places in all of Israel?
Jerusalem they renamed because
Al-Quds.
Yeah.
Right. But actually, but somebody pointed out to me, he said, these are the only three places where it unequivocally says in the Bible, which of course they revere the Arabs, the Muslims, the Islam claims to revere the Jewish Bible as well as the Christian Bible, by the way. But in the Jewish Bible, it says unequivocally in three places that the Jews bought the land for their family in perpetuity. David bought the site of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And in Hebron, that's where the Cave of the Patriarchs is. And that, of course, was bought by Abraham in the book of Genesis. And in Shechem, that's where Joseph was buried, as is mentioned in one of the prophets. I forget where, right now off the cuff. But understand that these are the three places where if the Arabs want to claim that this land is theirs and was always theirs, they have to deny the fact that the Bible says that the Jews bought it. So they renamed it. But the renaming of Al-Quds, Jerusalem in particular, is kind of problematic because Al-Quds is a contraction of Bet al-Maqdas, which is in Hebrew Beit HaMikdash, the site of the Holy Temple. Beit HaMikdash means Holy Temple. So Bet al-Maqdas means the Jews' holy temple. And that's why they call it Al-Quds. It's a contraction.
Huh. That I did not know. And to me, that should also be in the textbooks. Holy cow. This is the stuff that we need to get out there. And this is what I was hoping. My goal is to take this interview and to push it out to as many social studies directors as well that I can find.
I would love it. By the way, we're past 6:30 already. I wasn't sure if we're doing a half hour, an hour.
If you want us, I wanted to talk a little bit about the anti-Semitism in America that's hitting, and I brought up Canary Mission, the articles, because I'm looking at what my book, Civilization Jihad, addresses that the Islamization factor, the civilization jihad happens in four areas, and it starts at the colleges. And I think that's how they got to destroy our textbooks.
I apologize. I dragged us right back to talking about Israel.
No, but this was extremely important. So it was great.
And it's all, this is all important, but the bottom line is that SJP, again, it's based on that false claim that Palestine has a justice problem, that there is, in fact, a distinct land called Palestine, that the Arabs of Palestine are somehow disenfranchised, and that this is a problem that students have to resolve. But as you pointed out, SJP becomes tied again and again to anti-Semitic activities on various campuses. There's a 2016 survey done by a group called Amcha Initiative out in California is where their headquarters is. But they did a survey of the largest 100 campuses in the United States and found an unequivocal linkage between anti-Israel activity and anti-Semitism. A week
Definitely.
after, I think it was UC Irvine voted to divest from Israel in their city council, and some of them, some people in the council, what happened was that the Israel allies, when they saw they weren't going to win, they staged a walkout from the council meeting. They said they were not being treated fairly, it was not being treated decently, and some of the other people on the council yelled Allahu Akbar after them.
I believe
Allahu
I covered
Akbar
that 2 years ago. Yeah.
Allahu Akbar only is used in two situations. One is a call to prayer, and two is when we're about to murder somebody. That's when you hear Allahu Akbar. So they were not doing a call to prayer. So it is not a coincidence that the Jewish fraternity had a swastika painted on it a few days later. In fact, Amichas showed that in case after case across the country, if you have anti-Israel activity, if you have anti-Israel professors, if you have anti-Israel student groups, one after the next, there is a correlation. Because you hear this all the time. I mean, when I'm talking to people, whether they love Israel or hate Israel, they start talking to me about it, even though I'm an American Orthodox Jew. What are you talking to me about Israel for? How do you know I like Israel? Everybody understands that Israel is the Jewish country. It's where the most of the Jews are.
And I'm never sure about that, to say that's where most of the Jews are, because when I look at the Jewish population and how the diaspora resulted with so many Jews all over the world, is that really the place where the most Jews are, or is that where the most are concentrated?
I believe it is now the plurality, meaning to say that there are nearly, or yes, 6 million Jews in America, but there are 6.6 in Israel and lesser populations everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It isn't. I've had friends go and they've been so thrilled, and I've had a couple of friends go and live there. And they don't want to be anyplace else. They're sad when they come back here.
You look in Jewish history and this nonsense that the Jews all left in the last 2,000 years. I mean, where was the Palestinian Talmud written? It's actually because the Jerusalem Talmud is also called the Palestinian Talmud. There was something called the Palestinian Gaonet, which was the period of scholars after the Talmud was finished. Well, there's a Palestinian one. They were still living under Roman rule in Palestine. When the Crusaders came through and invaded Jerusalem, and they pushed out the Muslims, they killed out the Jews. Well, within 100 years, the Jews were coming back. The Maimonides, and people have probably heard the name of the scholar Maimonides.
Yes.
He did not start off in Israel. He was buried in Israel. The Code of Jewish Law, the fellow who wrote it, Rabbi Luria, he passed away. Rabbi Yosef Karo, he passed away in Israel. Rabbi Yosef Luria, who's called the Arizal, he's the one, the Kabbalistic master. He also moved to Israel. So time after time you see, and by the way, Hebron in particular, the West Bank Arab city of Hebron, the Arab city, in the 1500s, it was one of the 4 concentrations of Jewish scholarship in Israel.
Wow.
So, there's all of this material. It's all based on lies, all based on a rewrite of history. And how did Hebron become an Arab city? Because they killed off their Jews.
Yes.
In 1929, they staged a massacre. And the British said, we can't protect the remainder here. We're going to move you to Jerusalem. And that's how it became an Arab city. And then, of course, when Jordan took over, when Jordan ruled the old city in the West Bank, at gunpoint, they expelled all their Jews. It was entirely Judenline. It was pure racism. Whereas Israel, by comparison, is displacing no one and getting accused of being apartheid and racist.
And this is what we call basically racism and prejudice. And you're starting with a perspective when you make those statements and you don't go and investigate them. in a historical manner. You just take the opinions of other people and accept them as normal, but you don't investigate. And to me, that's unscholarly. It's unprofessional, and it is disgusting. I'm sorry. People who teach this stuff should just either be slapped awake or be in danger of losing their jobs, because the truth is, this information's out there. It's available for anybody to find out on their own. You can't. It's not like you can't go to Israel and investigate it on your own to find out either. And there's many.
I want to give you one example of how it works in America. The racism of the anti-Israel movement. There's a left-wing. It's actually a public school, but it's a magnet school called Beacon High School in Manhattan. It's under the New York City Department of Education. They held a moment of silence in memory of the victims, of the Palestinian victims in Gaza. That's what they held a moment of silence for. And this is now, so many times the anti-Israel folks will tell you, oh, but you see, we can influence Israel because it's a first world democracy, and that's why we're boycotting it, specifically because we hope to influence it. Okay, but Beacon High School wasn't actually doing anything. They were holding a moment of silence. They've never held a moment of silence. They did not hold a moment of silence for any of the victims of the school shootings in America over the last year alone. There have been like over 20 in 2018. We sent them a letter to which they did not respond, of course, but in which we pointed this out. And we said, wait a minute, have you held a moment of silence for the victims of San Bernardino and Orlando and the people who were mowed down by a terrorist in a rented Home Depot pickup truck right there in Manhattan by the World Trade Center? No moment of silence. How about the victims of terrorism in Europe and in Afghanistan, in Kabul, where they blew up, the terrorists, Islamic terrorists, blew up an ambulance loaded with explosives and killed over 100 people? Do they hold a moment of silence for any of those? No. Did they hold a moment of silence? How about a moment of silence for the people killed by shootings this year? How about even the Israelis who've been killed since 2015 alone by the colleagues of the same terrorist organizations whose losses you just mourned? Nope, none of the above. No such thing. And they only held a moment of silence for these where the Hamas admitted. They said that 85% of the people who were killed in this so-called indiscriminate shooting were in fact members of the terrorist organization.
And that's when, and after that was said, and it is really important. It's after that was said, then they held the moment of silence. In my school,
they certainly had the ability to know.
Yeah, in my school, I will tell you that we've held a moment of silence for the school shootings. We've held a moment of silence for the Orlando attack. We've held moments of silence for all these attacks. But we will. The school where I'm at, they're not holding a moment of silence for those who kill. And I'm glad to say that we don't.
We said, is that celebrating humanity or celebrating barbarism? Because you're not celebrating humanity if you're only going to memorialize the terrorists who were killed.
That's exactly it.
Yet they want to invert the narrative. They want to claim that, they were protesting about the move of the embassy. No, they weren't. They want to say they were just trying to return to their homes. No, they weren't. Hamas said, go to the border, tear down the border, and tear out their hearts from their bodies. Go murder Jews. They provided them. They said, bring your guns and knives, and here are maps that will lead you to the civilian communities inside Israel. Should you manage to get through the barrier, should you get through the border, here's the communities. Go kill people. Even better, kidnap them. Even better, kidnap them.
I do want to let you know I have covered all that in news that I do every week. And one of the first news stories I have up for this week goes along with what you're just talking about. The incendiary kites that's my first news story actually that I'm going to be covering is on the kites that have damaged. I believe it's 1,000 acres of land in Israel.
Yeah, if you had a house, and somebody else stole your house from you, would you burn it down?
That's a good question. Why would you burn it down?
They're claiming that that's actually their land, that they own it, it's their homeland, they are the rightful owners. Okay, if you're the rightful owners and it's your land, would you be burning it? So it's obvious
right.
that it's obvious something else is going on here. It's just mythology. I actually have another call, unless you really have
I was just going to say,
else.
please tell people how they can follow your work and how they can connect with the coalition that you work with.
Yes, the Coalition for Jewish Values. Actually, the easiest way to type it in is cjvalues.org. If you really want to type a lot, you can spell it out, coalitionforjewishvalues.org. But for those of us who want shortcuts, cjvalues.org will take you right there, and you can see what we're publishing now and what the scope of our issues, of course, go way beyond just Israel. We're a pro-values Jewish organization. We are tired of seeing the misrepresentation of Judaism by leftists who are projecting their own liberal values as Judaism out to the world. And, of course, this is of great consternation to Christian communities where they get their values from the Bible, and they say, oh, yeah, this is from the Bible, and, yeah, it's from the Jewish Bible. And all the Jews are telling them, no, they're not. That's wrong. That's outdated. We're supposed to do something new now. And it's crazy. So as a Jewish organization, we hope to be vocal about real Jewish values and thus, show America where our real values lie, because the truth of the matter is the biblical values are what made America a great country in the first place.
Well, thank you, Rabbi. I really appreciate you taking time out of a busy day to join us. I consider it a great honor to have had you. And I will send you the link when I put it up into YouTube as well, so you can share it out. My goal is to get this out to educators across the United States and Canada. Hopefully, we can change what people see and think.
And that is terrific. And actually, somebody was recommending me today I should have a podcast, or might think about a podcast. And here I am together with you on Blog Talk Radio, and I'm kind of looking at it and saying, okay.
Well, we actually have a slot open if you're interested.
You might be advertising my show one day.
Well, we have a slot open if you're interested. We'll talk. If you're interested, we'll talk offline a little bit.
We should. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. God bless. We'll see you soon.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Boker Tov. All right. I am so excited to have had him. It was only by pure blessing. My trip to D.C. paid off incredibly, and this is just one of the ways. To have met the rabbi and talked with him, he's a wealth of knowledge, and and that's the reason I wanted to discuss this issue. I'm seeing these awful things said about Israel that are not true in a public forum. What I'm talking about being people who teach children are saying these things. And this is why I wanted this show to go out today. And it was just such an honor to have him. And he's very, very knowledgeable, and I'm very thankful he spent his time with us. I want to get into the kites that were Ynet News. My first story, as I said, is on the fires. Ynet News writes this: incendiary kites spark major fire near Sapir College. Now, this incendiary kite flown from Gaza sparked a major fire in an open field across the Sapir College in the Shahar Hanegev Region Council near the southern city of Sderot on Tuesday afternoon. Heavy smoke covered the college building as firefighters were dispatched to the area, worked to prevent the fire from spreading to the nearby road and into the college. On Tuesday afternoon, fires broke out in 7 other locations in the Gaza vicinity. So while these kites are doing this kind of damage, they're also flying into their own neighborhoods and inflicting damage. But I had read, I believe it was it 100 or 1,000 acres? I could not believe the amount of damage. I have to go back and really quickly look. According to Defense Ministry, 600 such kites have been sent from the Strip so far, while 400 have been intercepted by Israeli security forces using technological means. 200 succeeded in reaching our territory, and they burned 9,000 dunams of crops and forests. The devastation is disgusting and a lot. Now, one of the things we mentioned today was the concept of ethnic cleansing. So I'm going to have that is my next story. It just came out today by Gatestone Institute, The Ethnic Cleansing of Northern Cyprus, Confessions of a Turkish Cypriot Mass Murderer. This is by Uze Bulat. Is Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, who keeps talking about Cyprus as a security threat to the Eastern Mediterranean, trying to deliver a message? Erdogan has long been warning Cypriot and international companies exploring energy resources in the region not to trust the Greek side in Cyprus. The Turkish president's repeated verbal attacks on Greek Cypriots also shed light on a recent interview broadcast live on Turkish Cypriot TV with 84-year-old Turgut Yanagarli, a former member of the Parliamentary Turkish Resistance Organization, founded in 1957 for its criminal activities in Cyprus. Yanagarli, in the interview, boasted about his role in the mass murder of Greek Cypriots and the reason for it. He said, "We traveled across Cyprus and either beat up or killed those who committed crimes against Turkishness," he began. Question: why did you engage in those activities? Was it an adventure for excitement? No, it was for Turkishness. They asked, was it easy to kill these people? And Yanagarli responded, there is nothing more enjoyable. We took great pleasure after we killed those people. Question: did you care about whether those people were criminal or not? Yanagarli: why would anyone care, criminal or not, as long as they are kafirs? They belong to the same race of dogs. When we wanted to shoot the kafir, this puts in the two women members of the group, hid guns in their brassieres and carried them for us. Yanagarli said that he and his friends were never told by Turkish Cypriot leaders to reduce or stop their activities. This omission is probably not surprising, given that one of TMT's key founders was Rauf Denktaş, who served as the head of the Turkish Federated State of Cyprus. So what are we talking about? It's a Muslim cleansing of Cyprus. It was a genocide. And if we look at what's happening and Erdogan's encouraging, he would be in for doing this again. Now, thank you. And Flycatch has shared that it's actually hit the New York Times. Amazing. I'm shocked. I did not expect to see that. Now, going back to where I usually start, the stories in America. This one comes from the Washington Times. It's by Andrew Blake of the Washington Times, came out June 2nd, this Saturday. Jamal Haraz, charged with bomb threat over Arab Andy YouTube prank video. Police have charged a person with making a bomb threat over a stunt streamed live on the internet from the University of Washington this week. Jamal Hassan Haraz was arrested Thursday evening over an apparent prank broadcast live on YouTube from a classroom inside the University of Seattle's campus. Mr. Haraz remains in jail after a judge set bail at $75,000, according to the King County Sheriff's Office website. He's due back in court June 5th. Now, that would have been yesterday. Seattle's KOMO News reported. Footage originally streamed from the Arab Andy channel on YouTube showed the incident unfolding moments after a person later identified as Mr. Haraz entered the room and began filming with their phone. I didn't recognize him so as to say, you're supposed to be here. Are you supposed to be here? An eyewitness told the student paper. Seconds later, an ominous message began playing from a speaker that police said was attached to the person screaming, "Attention!" The auto message said, "C4 has been successfully activated. Bomb detonation countdown successfully started." YouTube has removed the video from the Arab Andy channel, but archived copies show people fleeing the room as the speaker started emitting a series of loud beeps. Police subsequently identified Mr. Haraz as a suspect and apprehended him off campus moments later with his cell phone in hand, still streaming. The investigation revealed this was a prank, and there was no device on him or left in the room. The University of Washington police said afterwards, UWPD, in collaboration with Seattle Fire and Seattle Police, determined there was no ongoing danger. The bogus bomb warning was played through the speaker after a YouTube viewer who was watching the live broadcast donated money to make it happen as part of an internet prank. Mr. Haraz told the police this. After 7,000 YouTubers have subscribed to the Arab Andy channel, where other videos still exist of similar stunts filmed around Seattle involving loudspeakers and the platform's text-to-speech feature. The YouTube channel is run by a streamer willing to do anything for some good content, according to their online profile. And this is what they call a prank. It's definitely not in good taste. This next one comes from AmericanMilitaryNews.com. Virginia man who wanted to join Islamic State gets 5 years for lying to the U.S. Army. This is by Scott Dougherty. A Williamsburg man who traveled to Jordan in a failed attempt to contact a terrorist group and then tried to join the U.S. military was sentenced Monday to 5 years in prison. Shivam Patel, 28, who was ordered to pay $4,000 in fines in connection with the 2 counts of making false statements during his military application process. Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew Bose and his defense attorney, Timothy Clancy, declined to comment. In court, the prosecution asked for a sentence of 8 years in prison, while the defense wanted time served about 11 months. Federal guidelines called for a sentence of between 8 and 14 months. According to the court documents and prosecutors, Patel, who was raised Hindu before converting to Islam several years ago, traveled to China in July 2016 to teach English. While there, he grew displeased with how that country treats Muslims. His employer arranged for Patel to fly back to Virginia on August 23, 2016. But instead, Patel traveled to Jordan, where he was arrested a few days later for unspecified reasons. Court documents said Patel told taxi drivers and others in Jordan that he supported the Islamic State. A search of Patel's computer showed he researched how to join the Islamic State before he left for China. Jordanian officials moved to deport Patel, prompting him to return to the United States on September 2, 2016. On his way back to Virginia, he stopped in Detroit, where he started talking with an undercover FBI source about the Islamic State. He explains that he went to Jordan in part to find like-minded Muslims. He said he wanted to do something bigger, better, and more purposeful, like dying in the cause of Allah. Patel stayed in touch with the FBI source, and after returning to Williamsburg at one point in his conversations with the source, he expressed support for Major Nidal Hassan, who killed 13 soldiers in 2009 while serving at Fort Hood. About 9 weeks after that conversation, Patel made his first call to the military recruiter. Bose said, "Simply expressing support for a terrorist organization or attack is not against the law." Patel's crime was failing to disclose his trips to Jordan when he was trying to join the Army and Air Force in December 2016 and January 2017. Court documents say Patel lied about his travel history. He had said his only time out of the country in the past 7 years was a family trip to India in 2011 and 2012. During an interview with the Army, the recruiter asked to see Patel's passport to confirm his travel claims. Patel agreed to bring it in, but 2 days later he told the State Department he had accidentally thrown it away in October and needed a new one. In a letter to the court, Patel, who had a degree in criminal justice from the Virginia State University, recalled a history of mental health problems, his shifting views on religion and spirituality over the years, and his desire to help others. He added that after returning from Jordan, his views on Islam changed significantly to the point where he is again attending Hindu services with his parents before his arrest. He said he tried to join the military and other paramilitary organizations in the area, like Suffolk and Williamsburg police departments, because his parents were trying to arrange a marriage. He said he was trying to make himself more attractive to a prospective wife. In his own court documents, Clancy summarized multiple conversations Patel had with the FBI source in which his client said he disagreed with the actions of the Islamic State. The defense attorney added an FBI analyst had a medium level of confidence early last year Patel was not a threat. Yet he lied to get into the military. Could this have been another Major Nidal Hassan situation? It's something to consider. We've got to pay attention, people. We've got to watch. Now, John Rossimondo is one of my favorite writers for the investigative project on terrorism. He put out an excellent article yesterday called "The SPLC is Indifferent to Muslim Anti-Semitism." I'm just going to start this one out, and you probably can guess where it's going, but this is well researched and well done. Muslim anti-Semitism receives scant mention from the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, an organization that is supposed to be dedicated to fighting hate and extremism. Its website has 1,327 articles about non-Muslim anti-Semitic actions, statements, or hate crimes. Less than 10 articles out of thousands on its website mention Muslim anti-Semitism. Instead, it allies with Islamist groups and leaders, including the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, while giving their anti-Semitism a pass. SPLC's credibility has been questioned. It took down its media guide this year after Quillam Foundation co-founder Majid Nawaz pointed out that its media guide contained fabrications about him. That guide also attacked IPT Executive Director Stephen Emerson. While the report may be gone, SPLC Intelligence Project Director, a false accusation she made against Nawaz, claiming he was placed on a list of anti-Muslim extremists in part because he supported vast surveillance of Muslims. Barrick has produced no evidence to support the claim, which Nawaz insists is a lie. The SPLC says it fights hate, yet it criticizes groups that call out Jew-hating Islamists and ignores groups packed with Jew-hating Islamists. Center for Security Policy Executive Vice President Christopher Hull told the Investigative Project on Terrorism. Hull has a specified bone to pick with the SPLC, which criticized new Security Council Chief of Staff Fred Fleets, who worked for CSP until last week. SPLC accused Fleets of pushing an extreme anti-Muslim agenda for highlighting the penetration of the U.S. government by Islamic extremists. Fleets says critics are misrepresenting his record. Please don't associate me with the above criticism of mosques or the idea that the U.S. should deport Muslims or strip their citizenship, he wrote Saturday. I do not and have never supported this. SPLC rightly slams Klansmen like David Duke for complaining about a Zionist occupation of Washington, and other white supremacists for telling the Iranian press that Hollywood is controlled by Zionists. But SPLC stands silent when CAIR officials spout similar hateful rhetoric. Last month, CAIR Los Angeles Executive Director Hussam Alouche compared American Jews who serve in the Israeli army with ISIS terrorists. Do you know how many hundreds of Jewish American kids are recruited to join the Israeli occupation army? Alouche said, no one has ever established a CVE program to see why the normal American kids leave their homes to become part of an army committed to war crimes. They go to the American Muslim community, although the number of Muslims who join ISIS and Al-Qaeda is tiny. Alouche made similar statements in 2015. Such an anti-Semitic statements are frequent among CAIR leaders. Zara Billow, who heads CARE's San Francisco Bay Area chapter, echoed Alusha's statement about the IDF on Twitter and compared the IDF with ISIS in a May 25 tweet. Here's what he said. Actually, it's for the sake of speaking the truth. Both ISIS and the IDF are violent, immoral gangs. They're literally baby killers. This is what, and nobody's saying anything against this, huh? SPLC will ignore it. Both ISIS and the IDF are, just read that. She expressed horror last month at running the Zionist warmongers from AIPAC in the elevators and non-civil rights activities from ADL National in congressional offices during the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, Capitol Hill lobby days. But Bilbu has a long history of promoting Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan, someone the SPLC does identify as an extremist and anti-Semite. She featured a video by Farrakhan's group, the Nation of Islam, on her blog in 2010. A year earlier, Bilbu tweeted that she listened to Farrakhan while working out in the gym. The SPLC has yet to call out politically prominent Muslims who stand with Farrakhan or who trade in similar rhetoric. For example, the SPLC defended Women's March co-chair leader Linda Sarsour last year over her use of the word jihad, describing her as a loathed figure among anti-Muslim groups and individuals. This article goes on and just exposes the insanity of ignoring this. Now, it's important that we keep informed. It's important that we share this information. So, again, if you want to stay up on this, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm up to about 8,400 followers right now and connections on LinkedIn. Follow me on Facebook. Every day, every morning, I will share these stories with you. Some of these I'm sharing today I have not yet put out. Now we're going to switch over to the UK. And some of these stories, I'm going to read the hardest one first so I can get it out of the way. It's brief, but it's hard. This is by Breitbart, Oliver J.J. Lane, and it came out today. And this is hard. London baby stabbing. Man arrested for double attack was Pakistani national awaiting deportation. Police have arrested 25-year-old Rehan Khan after the attempted murder of a 1-year-old boy and his mother Monday evening sparked a national media appeal and manhunt. Khan handed himself into West London Police Station Wednesday morning after his mugshot was released by Metropolitan Police, and his details about the Pakistani migrant and his relationship with the attacked woman and child were reported in the British press. Neighbors of the stabbed woman in Pelham, southwest London, said suspect Redham Khan was the estranged husband to her and father of the baby, which remains in critical condition after being airlifted to hospital, according to reports in the Daily Mail and Metro newspapers. According to those who knew this family, Khan's application for indefinite leave to remain in the United Kingdom has been rejected just days before. He had applied for the status to stay in the United Kingdom through his British citizen, Belgian origin estranged wife, but had been turned down on the basis that he had beat the woman in the past, according to reports. When appealing to the public for information about Khan, police warned the suspect attacker should not be approached. One witness to the immediate aftermath of the attack reported police officers breaking down in tears after witnessing the crime scene and blood-smeared walls inside their house. Thank you, Kel, for posting that. Yeah, it's a really tough story. Going on, like I said, a lot of what I have today is from the UK. How about this one? Government audit. This again is Breitbart and comes from one of my favorite writers, Liam Deacon, and came out today. Government audit. 95% of UK extremist de-radicalization programs fail. Big surprise. More than 95% of government de-radicalization initiatives fail to work with the people delivering them, often too scared to mention religious extremist context and choosing to talk about Islamophobia instead of a government report is found. The study, commissioned by the Home Office, raises serious questions about the effectiveness of the PREVENT program and exposes politically correct failings in tackling Islamist extremism in schools, clubs, and English language classes. 33 de-radicalization programs across the country, mostly part of PREVENT, were accessed by the Behavioral Insights team, which is linked to the Cabinet Office. According to the report seen by the Police Professional magazine and reported in the Times, only 2 initiatives were a success, with one defying political correctness and tackling difficult issues head on, tackling difficult issues head on, and the other directly addressing extremism in religious texts. However, in another case in a school, researchers concluded it was ineffective because it was too restricted and treated groups of Muslim and non-Muslim students as the same, despite their obvious relevance of Islam. The study also found that those delivering the work often shied away from sensitive topics and would often refuse to engage entirely when they were mentioned. Some teachers were too afraid to even mention matters of race, religion, and radical Islam with students and to avoid politically correct accusations of discrimination, so key topics were sidestepped completely. Other schemes placed too much emphasis on hurt feelings, offense, and so-called Islamophobia. When you find these parts in there, you know the Muslim Brotherhood has been busy. They have been busy infiltrating your program. And that's another reason to do another investigation. And here is another story in England. Al-Qaeda bomb maker caught near Downing Street and message for UK's leaders. This is by Victoria Friedman. A man on trial for terrorism charges after being caught with a stash of knives near Parliament and the Prime Minister's Downing Street office claimed that he had a message for the UK's political leaders, a court has heard. Khalid Mohammed Omar Ali, 28, is on trial at the Old Bailey for preparing acts of terrorism by purchasing knives and traveling to the political heart of London on April 27, 2017, and the 2 charges of possessing an explosive substance in Afghanistan in 2012. Reports Sky News. Following his April 2017 arrest, Ali told police he owed his loyalty to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and that he wanted to deliver a message to the leaders and decision makers of this country. Brian Altman, QC, prosecuting, told the court that the suspected terrorist message to the UK's political leaders were that Western nations should leave Muslim countries, the West should release its prisoners of war, and the Palestinian territories should be given to the Arabs. And this all goes back. See, they're still asking for Israel. Why? Because then they don't have to. They have a fake claim. That's what it comes down to. This article goes on, and I'm not going to read the entire piece. Again, this is a terror suspect that was caught. What could have happened? I don't know if he hadn't been caught. He wanted to deliver a message. They heard it. Now, this week there's been trials of a couple kids in London who had been plotting attacks. This article comes from The Guardian, and it's by Nadia Komami. The article is entitled Teenage Girl Found Guilty of Plotting Terror Attack in London. This came out Monday. A teenager has been found guilty of plotting terrorist attacks in London, making her one of the youngest females to be charged and convicted of terrorism offenses in the UK. Safa Bular, 18, who was accused of discussing a grenade and gun attack on the British Museum in central London with her Islamic State militant partner, Naweed Hussein, who was also found guilty over an earlier attempt to travel to Syria for terrorism, when she was detained on charges of attempting to travel to ISIS-controlled territory in Syria on to her older sister, Rizlan Bular, 22. Safa Bular, who lived at home with her mom, Mina Dick, 44, in Vauxhall, southwest London, had denied 2 counts of preparing attacks of terrorism. Her sister, so it's the mom, the 2 daughters. Her sister had already pled guilty to planning a knife attack in London. Deek admitted assisting her, and the family friend, Kuala Barghouthi, 21, pled guilty to failing to disclose information about an attack. It is the first all-female terrorist cell linked to ISIS in the UK. The court heard that Bular met Hussein from Coventry, who was aged 30, and a known ISIS recruiter online when she was 16. They were in contact for 3 months before they declared their love for each other and had what she regarded as an online Islamic marriage. Duncan Atkinson, QC, prosecuting told jurors Bular wanted to marry Hussein and carry out a suicide attack in Syria. When she was stopped by police from joining him in the war-torn country, messages on her phone revealed repeated conversations about a potential attack in the UK. Bular claimed she never agreed to any attack. Her defense lawyer, Joel Bennington, a QC, said she was a child when Hussein groomed her. Around November 2016, he proposed to me about an attack at Christmas, Bular told the court. He asked me if I was scared of being in an attack, and I told him, yes, I am. Then he went back to the same usual lovey-dovey topics. She said after Hussein realized pair would never meet, he proposed an attack in the UK and said, even if I need a car or a knife, that's what I should do. When Bular rebuffed the idea, she told the court he just went back to the same conversation we had before, romantic and sweet. So, again, this is an example. This girl made a choice, was involved in plotting. Whether she agreed or not, that's between her and God, and that's what it comes down to. It's between the courts and her, too. She was convicted. She's the youngest one to be convicted in the United Kingdom. Brit firefighter suspended after writing support for Tommy Robinson. Now, this is what I call totalitarianism. They are fighting to hide what happened to Tommy Robinson, and that should be something we are all taking up on Global Patriot Radio, and I believe we all are. I have yet to meet Tommy Robinson, and I would love to shake his hand. If I get a chance to go to the UK and shake his hand, I definitely will. They're suspending people. They're going after people on social media in the UK for supporting a patriot in their country. That, to me, just shows the totalitarian ideology of the people in charge in England at this current time. This just is disgusting. It should be viewed as nothing else but totalitarianism. There is no reason for this. Tommy should be free. I don't know if President Trump has asked, but I hope to God he does. Somebody needs to stand up. This is just too disgusting. Now, I do want to thank those people who have come into the chat room and are listening. Bigfoot, Flycatch, Gary Comfort, Golf Dogs, Cal, Vorpal. I want to thank you all for listening. And before I forget, I do want to tell you of the other shows that are out there. And I just got a couple more news stories, and I'll get into that. So I just want to say thank you for being in the chat room, and if others want to join us in the chat room, great. I know we have a couple of listeners on the line, and thank you for being there. So let me get into this one. This is from Sydney, Australia. It's on the News Hub, and I don't believe I have an author for this article. The title, this came out today. Sydney terror plotters plan to blow up plane over the Blue Mountains. 3 brothers accused of plotting a Sydney terrorist attack had reportedly planned to blow up a plane over the Blue Mountains. Australia police revealed details on the intercepted terror plot in August of last year. The Kayat brothers had allegedly taken bombs to Sydney Airport, but backtracked on the plan to blow up an El Etihad Airway flight because they were too heavy to be included in hand luggage. Amar Kayat reportedly told Lebanese police that the bombs were programmed to explode after 20 minutes, at which point the plane would have been over the Blue Mountains, according to the news. The bombs were hidden in Barbie doll and meat grinders and would have killed 400 passengers and crew. Last August, Lebanese Interior Minister Nohad Mashnouk said the plot probably would have been successful if it weren't for the weight issue. Scary. And now I'm going to get to my last article, and I'm going to tell you about the other shows. The last article, suicide bombers kill 6 in attack in Niger mosque. 3 suicide bombers killed 6 people and wounded 37 late on Monday. This is Ramadan, people. This week has been filled, and I haven't even touched it. This week has been filled with suicide attacks, bombings. This Ramadan may take the cake for the worst on record since 2001. They are killing. They're in a killing frenzy. That's all I can think of describing it as. So in Niger, this is by Reuters, June 5th, 3 suicide bombers killed 6 people and wounded 37 late on Monday as they gathered at a mosque in southeastern Niger after breaking the Ramadan fast. The attack occurred in the city of Difa, near Lake Chad and the borders with Nigeria, Chad and Cameroon. The area is a stronghold for the militant group Boko Haram, which is fighting to establish an Islamic State in the region. More than 15,000 people have been killed and millions displaced by the conflict. Interior Minister Mohammed Bazoum said in a statement on Tuesday that 1 man and 2 girls carried out the attack. An army spokesman confirmed the death toll, revising down an earlier estimate that 10 people had been killed. There's just so much happening. Yes, it is Ramadan. It is Ramadan Bombathon, as some people call it. And there has been a lot of bombing. A priest was stabbed, and also, I can't remember the country at this point. Catholic priest was stabbed for protecting women who were being chased and harassed. There's a lot going out there, people. I'm only touching a tip of the iceberg with these stories. There's just been a ton this week. Again, if you want to follow me on Facebook, you can look me up, and you can find me on Twitter as Deplorable P. Sutliff. LinkedIn is probably where I share the most of my stories. Facebook, you'll find I'll share more stories than I will on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn, I have the best. I can track where my stories are going, the influence. I am going to tell you also that I have a course out there on thinkific.com. It's a history of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's the first course of many that I hope to develop. This first course is on the, and I'll have to figure out how to get a link in here next time. Take a look at thinkific.com. You can look up Civilization Jihad Awareness School, and you'll find the first course I put up there. I just reduced the fee, so if you're interested, it's $35, and it's just a pretty quick beginnings of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I'm going to go from there and develop the rest of the class. So let me get into what else is out there on Global Patriot Radio. We have a great amount of shows. Thursday night, we have the forum, which I want to remind people on June 28th, my show will be moving to Thursdays. So watch. June 28th, we are moving to Thursdays. Friday, we have Dr. Carl Goldberg and the Logic of Islam. It's a morning show. So if that's your best time to listen in, take advantage of that. Saturday, we have Usama Dakdok, and he does an evening show, a late evening show. Come listen to that. He's a great scholar and a preacher. He's really good. On Sunday, we have Erica Kafiristan. And if you don't get a chance to listen to him, you really do. I enjoy listening to Eric, and he does a great job. On Monday, we have Vito and Al, the two great radio men of Global Patriot Radio. I owe them a debt of thanks for getting me in here, Laura. I'm having fun each day that I'm on this show. So on Tuesday, you come back and you will find the beautiful Cal Fritzy with Infidels Are Watching. And on Wednesday, I will be back for another Wednesday. God bless you all, and thank you for listening. And I'm just going to throw in our goodbye music, and of course, it's my favorite. And the red, white, and blue, I just got to get it. Here we go. Toby Keith.